Hey, I'm Josh at Vacuums R Us in Colorado, and today I'm going to talk about a couple different pet vacuums and which vacuum is the best for pet hair. So over here I have Riccar's R40 Pet. I have Dyson's Ball Animal Plus, and then I have Sebo's Automatic X7 Pet. Something all three of these have in common is they're very mature platforms. So Riccar's been making this platform they just had their 20-year anniversary actually for this platform. Dyson has been making this particular design for over a decade now. And Sebo, the X7 platform, is also well over a decade old. So they've made some modifications, slight changes as they've gone forward, but all three of these are very mature machines that have seen a lot of production, right? So I'll get into some performance testing here. I'll show you some performance differences between the three of them. But first, before I get into that, and bear with me here, I want to talk about the concept of pet vacuums and how that relates to the incredible marketing engine that is directed at the vacuum cleaner industry. So for those of you who are just joining this channel, the vacuum industry is a $5 billion industry annually. There is a ton of money in this industry. You may not think about that, but try to name someone you personally know who does not own a vacuum cleaner. It is a massive market, and so there is a massive amount of money directed at marketing these products. And I've seen some of the most creative marketing I've ever seen in any other industry in this business. And I want to talk about how that relates to quote-unquote pet vacuums. So the concept of pet vacuums initially was introduced by Dyson, not surprisingly. Initially when they brought their DC07, which was their first commercially available, widely available model in the United States. We saw it in the infomercials a couple decades ago with James Dyson. Initially, when they brought that, they did a bunch of market studies on US consumers, and they found that the majority of consumers who were looking for better vacuums, their big cleaning challenge was pet hair. And they also found at that time that 80% of people who were shopping for premium vacuum cleaners were women. So they took their product, the Dyson model DC07, they created a purple version, which they felt would be more appealing to women, and then they called it the Dyson Animal. There were no changes to the design of that machine whatsoever. It was identical to the regular yellow, ugly DC07. It was an identical machine, but they marketed it as a pet vacuum. One thing they did do, it was a little different, was they did include a brush attachment that would attach to the hose here, which was presented as a product, as a tool that would pick up pet hair effectively. And that kind of justified kind of taking that exact same vacuum cleaner and calling it magically a pet vacuum. That trend has continued with department store and Amazon branded vacuum cleaners. That tendency has expanded further among the bigger names because they've discovered that if they color a vacuum differently and call it something a little different, they can perhaps put that model in Target and sell it for $200, and then maybe take the same model and make it a different color and put it in Walmart for $180. And you're not able to price match against those different major retailers because they're different models of vacuum cleaner. So we've also seen that kind of evolution. One of my colleagues mentioned the other day, they said they had 7 people in one day into one of our service centers who came in and said, I bought this vacuum from Walmart because it said it's really good for pet hair and now it's broken. And we looked at the machine, and indeed what had broken the machine was that they were picking up pet hair, and the pet hair had damaged the machine. So I think that's a really important note. Just saying that a vacuum is a pet vacuum doesn't necessarily make it ideal for pet hair. And the opposite is true too. There's lots of machines that are not marketed specifically for pet hair that may actually do very well on that. So we're going to do a performance test here between Riccar's R40 Pet and Dyson's Ball Animal Plus. The material that we're using down here is called Kapok. It's a naturally occurring fiber. I'm sure you've seen it before if you've been down this vacuum cleaner testing YouTube video rabbit hole. It mimics pet hair. It's very sticky. And it's hypoallergenic, so we don't have to have like piles. I don't have to shave my dog to give you a demonstration. So we're gonna get right into it. So I think you can see an obviously, and I'll get down to the stripe here in a second, but you can see that there is some general pickup differences in the areas where the Dyson does pick up Over the Riccar, we've got a little bit of a heavier matting of the fibers that kind of fluff up. There's a few more larger particles that weren't picked up here and there. But everybody wants me to talk about is this stripe down the middle. That's a design issue. They have produced this particular model of Dyson with this type of power head for over a decade without addressing this design issue. Not only is it an issue with the actual performance of the machine, it's also an issue with high failure. I actually was working with a customer yesterday who walked in the store with one of these exact machines, and they started to elaborate and tell me what they thought was wrong with the machine. And I said, no, that's fine. I see the machine. I know what's wrong with it. Because of the profoundly high failure rate of these heads, which is in part because of the design that causes this performance issue, I always know when somebody walks in with one of these, there's a 95% chance that their brush roller melted down inside of the head. But the reason we have this stripe here, there's a large gear block in the center where there are no brushes at all. So as you're vacuuming, you have this stripe that you're not cleaning across your carpet. And it's really obvious in this situation because we've got the pet hair. You can see the stripe there. I'm actually more concerned in situations where we're talking about deep cleaning, right? On the surface, you can see if you miss something. You get a little tuft over here, you'll go back over it again. But when we look at deep cleaning, there was no deep cleaning at all that took place on this stripe. And I think that in practical application, that is not an effective way to clean your floors, leaving these stripes all through the areas that you're cleaning on carpet that nothing picked up. All right, so now we're going to try Sebo's X7 Pet against the Dyson Ball Animal Plus. Real quick, I want to interject. In all of these videos when we're doing performance testing, we get a number of comments below, and I know we're going to get them for the people who didn't actually make it this far in the video. Well, that's why I own a shark. So most of the performance testing that we do, we pick machines that are in for service, that have been fully serviced, to do some of these performance tests against, or we have reconditioned machines that may have been traded in that we've fully serviced. All the sharks are broken, okay? All the sharks are dead. I literally just went through the entire repair line. There are 13 in there that have been checked in the last 3 days. Every single one of them, we can't even use them because they're non-functioning, okay? So for that's why I get the shark people, they're all broken. All right, so we'll get on to the demo. So again, I think we see very similar cleaning patterns in the areas where the Dyson did clean. It did fairly similar to the Sebo. I think if we look real close, we can see that there's a little bit less left behind by the Sebo, a little bit better performance. But generally speaking, similar actual pickup performance between the two, with the exception of the design flaw that's on the Dyson Ball. So I'm going to go over some of the features and some of the design of these three different machines that make them good or bad for pets. And I want to point out that these are not the only pet vacuums in the universe, but some of the concepts I'm going to go over, I'm going to talk about brush rollers, I'm going to talk about odor removal that's specific to vacuums that I believe are good pet vacuums. These concepts apply to any machine, and they're areas to look at when you're identifying machines that might be ideal for pets. So as I mentioned with the Dyson Animal is exactly the same as the other Dysons. So I don't have anything to point out on this that sets it apart from the other Dyson models to make it a pet vacuum. But we will get into some of the design of this machine that makes it good in some ways and maybe less than in other ways for pet hair. These two machines, both the Sebo as well as the Riccar, something that is unique to both of these models that makes them different than their other models, that makes them, in my opinion, a pet vacuum, is they do have charcoal filtration in their pre-filter. The filter that's in front of the motor has charcoal inside of it, and that charcoal is to remove pet odor. This is really important when you're looking at machines that will last 20 or 30 years, because over time, they're gonna smell like a dog. Now, I have a beautiful brown princess dog, and she is the bestest dog in the world, but she does smell like a dog sometimes. And all of the dog stuff goes inside the vacuum, and it sits there. I've had a lot of people comment, and a lot of the reason that people will bring some of their machines in here is they're like, it smells like a dog. I've had it 3 or 4 years. I turn it on. The whole house smells like, Poofy just rolled in the mud. So for me, that charcoal filtration is really important, especially if you're looking at a long-term investment in a machine, because it's going to smell bad without it. So I'll move on next to the brush rollers. And this is the business end of a vacuum cleaner. And everybody who's watching this video, the reason you're watching this is you've had vacuums that constantly wrapped hair, and likely the undercarriage of the machine ultimately became damaged because the hair melted or wrapped around the brush roller and broke it. Or maybe you felt like you had to constantly do maintenance on the machine and unwrap hair. So we're going to talk about brush rollers. I'm going to start with the Dyson, because at the beginning we did the comparisons and everybody saw that stripe that was going down the middle where we were not picking up. So this is the underside of the Dyson, and this right here is the reason that we saw that stripe of pet hair get left behind. This design, there actually are two separate brush rollers in here. And inside of this, there's these plastic gear thingies that kind of poke out inside of the brush roll that engage it and cause it to rotate. And this big old blank section here in the center of the machine is why we have that area that does not pick up. You can remove the base plate without a screwdriver on this. There's two little tabs. You pop it off and then you have more access to the brush roll. To remove the brush roll entirely though, you'll need to, there's two Phillips head screws on this side and on this side. And you need to remove those to pull the brush roll out. And from there, what you'll find is that yes, you can see the buildup that we have on this machine already, actually. We've done a few demos here today on this. You can remove the debris that's on there. However, what will happen is the debris works its way in the corners here and around the end caps and wraps around the bearing, typically melting and locking up the bearing. And the same thing happens inside of here, which is a significant concern and is, as I mentioned earlier, a high failure point for these machines. Another concern I have about the base of these machines are these wheels. You can see that we already are getting debris inside of here, and this is not rolling freely. It's kind of sticking a little bit. This wheel up here hasn't been locked up yet, and you'll see it rolls freely as it should. But what happens over use, and this machine was previously, it was serviced before we started today, and these were all cleaned out. What happens over use is these wheels start to lock up. My concern with that really doesn't matter on carpet that much. But if these wheels have locked up and you roll them onto a bare floor, you could potentially get grit under these. And if you have a fine polish on your floor, you could potentially scratch your floor. But who am I kidding? We're doing pet vacuums. You don't have a fine polish on your bare floor. Let's be real. On this machine, we see a very different design brush roll. This brush roller is metal with brush strip inserts here, and these are the nylon brush strips actually on this machine. It's one solid brush roll side to side. You do have a belt chamber right here on the side, and similar to the Dyson actually, you have an area right here that does not have grate cleaning on the side of the machine. Now this is a really traditional design in almost all machines where you will have to get the belt on it somewhere. I greatly prefer putting that on the side because in practical application, when people are vacuuming their floor, they will go back and forth and they will overlap, right? So you're going to overlap this and you're going to get your floor fully clean. My concern with Dyson's design, by putting that non-cleaning strip in the center, people don't necessarily overlap that far into the center of their vacuum cleaner as they're vacuuming. So this doesn't really concern me. This is very traditional. I don't really worry about that because of the overlap, but I do like a lot the concept of this metal brush. And you see, we've been demoing this all day. In fact, this is a floor model machine here at this store, and we didn't service it before we started demoing today. And the extent of what we have wrapped here is, it looks like there's a fiber, right? And we didn't even clean this off before we started today. That's pretty common with metal brush rollers. They tend to wrap much less than do plastic brush rolls or even wooden brush rolls. I'm not sure if it's because they spin them faster, maybe because they're slick, the hair just doesn't wrap as much. I don't know, but I know on Riccar, a lot of their machines, they use metal brush rollers and we just do not see the hair wrap that we do otherwise. So on this machine, if you wanted to clean the brush roller, you can do it from here. You can put a knife in there, X-Acto knife, something like that. There are two screws here, which will remove the base plate and give you a little bit more access to the brush roll. But from there, this brush roll is very difficult to remove because of the way the belt goes way back into the machine. So you're not really going to pop this brush roll out for cleaning. That said, I don't know that you need to. These bearings on the end that I mentioned, like on the Dyson, they have rubber end caps to them that it's very difficult for the hair to work its way around. And beyond that, This particular Riccar actually comes with a service plan. You can only buy these from dealers, and it comes with a service plan where you actually bring it in and they recondition your vacuum cleaner, I think twice during the first 5 years of ownership. So you're not going to be doing any of that anyhow. Your dealer is going to be doing it for you. So next we're going to look at Sebo's X7 Pet brush roller. This is a pretty unique setup. Sebo, all of their machines have this design or something very similar. They use a plastic brush roll. It is pretty big around, which tends to prevent wrapping. And it is one brush roll unit. It's not the two separate brush rolls. The advantage of having the one unit, obviously, is you don't have the stripe down the middle where you're not cleaning anything. And as well as that, you have 2 failure points instead of 1, 2, 3, 4 failure points. Now, this brush roll can and will wrap hair over time, but it is super, super, super easy to maintain. So this brush roll is super easy to take out for maintenance. There's a button right here. You'll push that, and it will release the side cap that retains the brush roll. And you kind of wiggle it, and it will pop right out, and you can clean it. Since I've got it out, I do want to show you some of the mechanics of this machine, because I'm a big fan of this, having worked on tech benches. This gear right here that goes inside the brush roll, that's what engages the brush roll, is metal, and it's metal for a reason. The plastic gears that are used on other machines melt constantly. It is very rare that I see one of these shafts and gearboxes fail. You can see there's minimal wrap right here. There's a little bit of hair, a tiny bit of hair, for a floor model that barely ever gets serviced and gets the snot kicked out of it every day. That's pretty impressive. Brush roll goes right back in easy. You push it in, you wiggle to engage, and then our end cap goes back on, and we're ready to vacuum again. So that's how Sebo addresses dealing with hair wrap on their pet vacuum. They make it super easy to maintain. So we're going to look at the pet tools that Riccar and Sebo include with their machine. Unfortunately, I don't have a Dyson tool to show you today. We have none in the store, but the Dyson's tool design is similar to the Sebo design, and we're going to go over these two different designs and kind of how they work. Riccar's is really unique. I don't know of anybody else who has anything quite like this, whereas Sebo's is a pretty common design that we see with a lot of different machines. So I'll start with Riccar's. Riccar's pet tool, and they call it the Forget It tool, very catchy, is essentially a lint brush that flips back and forth. So you push it back and forth across the surface, and it collects the hair and then deposits the hair inside the tool, and then the suction will pull all of the hair out of the tool as you're going, right? So that's essentially how it works, right? And you can see all of it just kind of gets up inside there. The way you're going to use it is you're going to attach it to the machine, and it just sucks it all out as you're going. I really like this. This is a really slick design. Sebo's tool that they include, and this is actually made by Wesselwerk, which is another German company. They buy these from them. These are really good turbo tools. They have a traditional rotating brush, and these are actually fan powered. So the air runs a fan that's inside here, and then a little belt connects to the brush right there and causes the brush to rotate. Now, what's important about these tools, and this is the same design that Dyson, Bissell, Hoover, everybody uses this design. What's really important about this is that because these are air powered, they need to have a high airflow machine hooked up to them to rotate fast enough to actually work. What we see a lot of is on lower airflow machines, they include this tool. It works one time. You use the vacuum, you start to clog your filters on the bagless design, you lose airflow, and this thing doesn't rotate anymore and it stays in the closet. Sound familiar? So the downside to this design is that this rotating brush will wrap hair, and it will wrap it fairly quickly. The nice thing I like about the brush that Sebo uses is that they are easy to service though. You've got a button right there, you pop it open, you can take it completely apart, it'll snap right apart, and then you have full access to the inside of it, and then you can clean it out. And you can tell, we've used this one. It definitely needs some service. Hopefully this has been helpful and you see some of the design areas to look at when choosing your next pet vacuum. These are not the only pet vacuums in the world, but this is a really good sample of the different offerings that are out there. My suggestion, find a local dealer of vacuum cleaners and go in and try some stuff out. I personally love the Riccar R40. I also like the Sebo X7 Pet. You might hate them. So go and try them at a dealer. Dealers always have demo models. They can make a mess in their showroom and clean it up and decide what you think. Because at the end of the day, I have opinions, but they don't really matter because I am not going to vacuum your house. You are.